to talk about obedience, and I'm going to talk about how it has been pivotal in my growth with, and just in my spiritual walk. But I want everybody to close your eyes for a minute, and we're going to answer some questions. And I just ask that you be really honest with your answers, okay? So if you have ever felt like God's plan was too big for you, raise your hand. If you feel like that you are going to mess up God's plan for your life, raise your hand. And if you have ever felt inadequate in any way, shape, or form, raise your hand.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, you guys can all open your eyes now. What do you think the percentages were? How many people do you think raised their hand on all three?
99.5.
Any other guesses?
75.
I don't know because I closed my eyes too. That's between you and God. That's just a moment of clarity for you so that you can kind of address where you are in your own life. But I can tell you that I answered yes to all three. That it's really hard to be obedient. And kind of kick all this off, I have to go back to when I met Pastor D. And we were at Southwest Baptist, and he had started a discipleship class. And he said, "Are you tired of where you're at? Are you ready for spiritual growth? Are you ready to be more than just status quo?" And I was like, "Yes, let's do this. Let's go. I want to do this. I need more." And that was there that I learned how to keep a quiet time journal. And at first it was kind of a joke because in the whole year, I think I might have had 40 quiet times that first year. And they were probably all done during the duration of the class because you had to get a week solid in order to pass the class. And that was really hard for me. We went ahead and went through the second book, and that was 2 weeks. So that next year, there was probably closer to, maybe 50 quiet times. But there was growth. And I struggled with it. And a lot of people tell me that they don't read, they don't do their quiet time because they have a hard time understanding. And I was at the same place for a long time. And I remember just sitting and telling God, "I want your word to come alive." Everybody tells me it does. They tell me that I'm going to learn how to apply this to my life, and it's not speaking to me. So I continued on, and I worked really hard. And sometimes that meant that I stopped, and I started over, and I prayed again, and I said, "God, I need this to come alive, because I don't hear what you're saying to me." So I continued on, and it was through basically learning how to have a quiet time, and through that discipleship class that my journey started. And I kind of kicked things into high gear after Alex was born. And I became a lot more consistent. I started setting numerical goals for the year because numbers talk to me. That's how you show consistency. And I set little goals like, I'm going to make it to 100. Less than a third of the year, I can do that. And just gradually grew every year to where I was getting to the point where I didn't miss. And it was hard not to get into a routine and just make it routine, because I wanted to still honor God and understand that this meeting time is very special, but at the same time, you have to plan for it. And so just understanding that it is very important to your growth, and that meeting with the creator of the universe is anything but routine. But in 2013, Alex would have been 2 years old, or almost 2, and I started struggling greatly with anxiety. And I'd always been kind of an anxious person, or a worrier. I know that there are several of you in here too. And I worried most about Alex's salvation. My girls had committed their lives to Christ when they were very young, and they'd both been baptized, and I felt secure in their decisions. But there was Alex, and I saw everything going on in the world, and I was so scared. I said, "God, what if he's left behind?" Because the Bible is silent on what Christians commonly refer to as the age of accountability. And so, knowing how precocious he was and his understanding of things, I'm like, does it happen when he understands? Does it happen when he knows that he's done wrong? So, I tried to find a way to give it all to God, and I started praying for him. And I pray for my kids every night, but I felt like God told me I needed to go in and lay hands on him and pray. And so I did. And he would tell me things like he would see monsters, or he would have nightmares or night terrors, and I kept praying. And I finally decided that I was just going to let the Spirit lead what I prayed, because I didn't know how to give it to God. And I said, God, help me know what I'm supposed to say to you. How do I get rid of this fear? And I actually started praying that God would speak to him through his dreams and establish a relationship with him before he was old enough to establish that relationship himself. And it got kind of weird. Alex would tell us at bedtime, Daddy, I know that you used to kiss Mommy's belly when I was in there, and you would say how much you love me. And that you're so excited that I'm going to be your son. And he would tell us about things that God helped him through when he was an infant, and how God's kept him safe. And he's like, and God loves us very much. It wasn't too long after that, I really started praying that one day we're sitting in the living room and he's playing on the couch and I'm just watching him because he's kind of hilarious. And he said, Mommy, did you know that I get to go to heaven and be with my Jesus? And I said, oh, you do? He's like, yeah, like you and Daddy and Sissies, I get to go be with Jesus. And I said, oh, how do you do that? He said, well, you just have to have my Jesus in your heart, and I have my Jesus in my heart. And I stopped for a second, and I said, well, who helped you get Jesus in your heart? And he looked at me really confused. And I said, did you pray in Sunday school? Did you pray on Wednesday night? And he said, well, my Jesus helped me get Jesus in my heart. And so I felt like God had really answered my prayer in a big way, and that he had walked Alex down the road to lead to his salvation. Now, we did pray with him later on, and really explained to him, that happened when he was 3, almost 4. So, it's a little bit of a difference between the time that he got baptized and the time that he accepted Christ, to make sure that he really understood the gravity of his decision, and that he understood what he was following through when he got baptized. And so I said, God, if you can do this just for me being obedient in prayer, what can you do with the rest of my life? And it was kind of quiet for a while, as calm before the storm. And in July of 2015, I get a phone call from someone I haven't heard from in a long time. And she's like, hey, this is Kathy Bond, and I want you to go to a Premier Designs jewelry meeting. Okay. Now, anybody that's known me for long enough knows that I did Mary Kay a long, long time ago. And I wasn't super great at it. I didn't have much success with it. And that was just fine with me. It was a learning moment. So I was like, okay, I will go to this meeting. And in my head, I'm thinking, I'm not signing up. I'm not doing this. I will go and help Kathy. I will be the warm body that she wants. I will smile. I will be pleasant. And I will go home. We've gone through the meeting, I've listened to the presentation, and God's like, you're going to do this. No. And I had a conversation with Robbie, and he said flat out, if God's called you to do it, he's going to help you. And you need to do it. So I did. And Kathy was great. She was a very pleasant lady. God-fearing woman, and understands that you need to live out your faith. And she was very helpful. And a little bit before my, I don't know what they would call it, not necessarily like a debut party. The first party that you have is Premier Lady. She was just really encouraging, not just in the business, but in my personal life as well, and just encouraged me to be obedient. And that's a hard word sometimes. So I'm preparing for this party, and God's like, hey, I got something else for you to do. I'm like, God, I'm already doing this. This is huge for me. What else can I do? And he said, I want you to write a letter. And at the time, someone that was very close to me had just recently had surgery. And this person was responsible for bringing in the income for their family and was going to be off work for a longer period of time than they had imagined. And God said, you're going to write a letter to their family and friends, and you're going to tell them their story. And I was like, okay, well, that sounds productive. And I was really skeptical as if it would not work. And I'm thinking back now, like, God would never call you to do something that he wasn't going to use. So I wrote the letter, and I sent it out, and I thought, this is never going to work. This is so silly. I feel so stupid having done this. These people probably think that I'm crazy. I don't even really know half of them. And their mortgage got paid, and they received many other gifts. And so it was not just for them, it was for me. And in your moments of skepticism, God can show you that you can trust him. So I wrote the letter, I sent it out, and just worked my way through Premier, doing whatever I felt God had called me to do. And after the new year, we had just started talking about an interactive play at the church we were going to at the time. And I had someone ask me to be part of that production. And I literally said, without thinking, if I can do Premier, I can do anything. And then I was like, why did I say those words? I'm going to take those back. Come back words. But I did it. And people were saved. And it's not necessarily just because I was obedient, but everyone was obedient. And ultimately, that's what we're called to do, is to share God's message with people, and they're supposed to come to him. So I continued on. I didn't have a lot of Premier Designs parties after that. They kind of fizzled out. And then I had a dream about someone that I didn't even really know. I knew of her, and I had heard her story. And her story was remarkable, from where she had been to where she had come. And the overall gist of the dream was that I needed to tell her not to give up. Oh God, why did you choose me? I don't know this lady. She doesn't know me. This is going to be so weird. I don't want to be that awkward person. And he's like, but you said you would do it, and I know you'll do it, so do it. So after church that Sunday morning, I went and I found her, and I said, hi, I'm Jennifer. We don't really know each other. We've never been formally introduced. Our daughters are in the same Sunday school class, and my husband and I are over the youth group here. I feel like God has a message that he wants me to give you. And most people are probably like, okay, this person's weird. And I said, I feel like God is telling me that I need to tell you not to give up. And she threw her arms around me and gave me a big hug and said, I needed to hear that.
Aww.
And to this day, I don't know what it means to her, because within a few weeks, she passed away.
Aww.
But she needed that message, so I delivered it.
Amen. Amen.
So through all these little steps of obedience, seeing God move, we kind of moved on to bigger things. And God called us to be part of Discover Church, which was huge. We're going to be part of starting a church. We do a lot of church now. We're going to be doing a lot more church if we're helping to be part of this. And God said, it'll be okay. I've got this. Which he always does. he's always got this. It's when we try to take it back that we struggle so much. And so between quiet time journals that I'm still doing and really praying more and doing studies and things, we had a lot of small group studies there in the beginning when we started Discover Church, and those were huge. And I like to call them growth spurts, and I had a lot of those in the first, I guess, 2 years that we had to start a Discover Church. And I remember in January of 2018 sitting in church, and we were doing the corporate worship time, and I was just marveling at how awesome it is when people have talents and they use them. And I was thanking God for everything that the worship team really does, and that they were using their talents. And God's like, you're going to be part of that. And I said, do you have the right email inbox? I'm pretty sure that was supposed to go to my neighbor or something. He said, no, you're going to go up there and you're going to learn to play the drums. Okay, God, well, I played violin in high school, and that's not really the same. As if God had no idea that they're not even close to the same instrument. And so I said, okay, God, if that's what you want me to do, I will do it, but here's the deal. You've got to give me money to pay an instructor, because I'm going to need one of those. You're going to have to find an instructor that's going to be good for me. I'm going to need a drum kit, because I don't have one of those just laying around. And I'm going to need a lot of skills, because I don't have those either. And God showed up in a big way, of course. And it's actually kind of where Michelle and Rolando come in. And I got the electric kit at no cost to me, and some names of some instructors, and I called plenty. If they didn't answer their phone, they either didn't have a time slot available, or they were very proud of their skills, and I was working on a budget. So I told God, the next person that answers the phone that meets my criteria, that's who I'm going with. And literally the next phone call, it barely rang. He answered the phone. He's like, I charge $25 per half hour. That's pretty good. And I only have these time slots available, which were the exact times that I could actually go to the class. And I said, okay, God, this is who I'm going with. And I went to my first lesson, and I was so scared. I had drumsticks in my hand. I'm like, these feel foreign to me. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I found out that not only was he a very skilled drummer, but he also plays for a church worship team. So he knew what I would be going through, what I would be playing, and kind of the expectations of a church worship team. And that first lesson was, well, he said, very interesting. And he said, you hold the sticks really well, you have great natural rhythm. I'm like, I don't know where that came from. And so we sat down at the kit, and I'm thinking, okay, I have no idea. He's like, well, just sit down here, and I'll show you how to do it, and I want you to layer it. So layering in is when you start with one piece of the drum kit, and you add in all the other pieces gradually. And I couldn't do it. I'm like, great, God, look, you called me to do this, and I can't even do it. And he said, well, it's kind of unorthodox, but maybe just try to do it all at one time. And I tried it, thinking, what do I have to lose? I've already gotten this far, and I did it. And all he said was, interesting. And I know that the look on my face had to be probably priceless, because I have no idea how that happened. I'm still saying that's God right there, because violin and drums are very different. And who can move their limbs independently? That's really, it was intimidating. And so I worked really hard, and I became kind of frustrated with where I was. And there was not a lot of support in what I was doing. also hard because I'm learning to play an instrument that is predominantly male dominated. It's not seen as ladylike, and so lots of more traditional people would say that that's not something that I should be doing. And I had a few cheerleaders, but when somebody, if anyone's ever told you that the negativity outweighs positivity, they're right. It's really hard to stay positive if you have so many people telling you to quit. And I showed up to one of my lessons and I was defeated. And my instructor said, I don't know what you're freaking out about because you are months ahead of where I thought you would be. You are way further ahead than most people who have never picked up drumsticks. And I only took 6 months of lessons before he's like, get with your worship team, start practicing with them, see if you're a good fit. And that was really surprising because I thought, 6 months? I really thought it would take like 5 years, at least. So I got to that point and I started feeling really isolated and started kind of taking inventory of all of my life and really thought that if God could take the broken pieces that I have and still use me to do something that obviously I was not skilled to do before, that he can do anything. But I looked around and realized that my marriage wasn't what it should be. And I felt very neglected and emotionally abused. And I voiced my concerns, but they were brushed off. And it got to the point where I wasn't able to eat anymore, at least not adequately. And I felt really sick, a lot. And I prayed, which I had been praying. If anybody knows anything about marriage, it's not easy, ever. If it's worth it, it's not easy. And through prayer and reading books and talking with people that I trusted, trying to figure out how to fix it. But everything that I was met with was resistance. Now, I did talk to Robbie before I spoke to you guys, so he knows everything that I'm going to say. But I began going to counseling in July of 2018 and trying to figure out why I felt the way that I did. And came to realize through godly counsel that I had basically been emotionally divorced. And that it's always two people. It takes two to make a marriage. Well, three, including God, but the problems are not from God, they're from us. They're from our humanness. And through my counselor, realized that I was codependent. And the reason that I felt so terrible was because I was looking to Robbie to feel my value instead of to God. And the funny thing is that codependent people also kind of attract people that like to take advantage of those lack of boundaries. So it was a tough place. And I prayed a lot and still continued through my quiet time and sought out counsel and read more books. And finally said, God, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to make it better. I've been praying for so many years. Why is it not better? Now, prayer works, but it's always in God's time. And it's always the way that he wants it to be. So I had another dream, and God said I was released. And I felt relief to do what I knew I had to do, but I didn't want to do. and I filed for divorce in August of 2018. And of course, it's not what I had planned. I planned on forever, but when the death portion of till death do you part seems a little more enticing, it's probably not healthy. So the weekend after I filed, I stayed at my dad's house, and I left a letter for Robbie, and the kids and I were at my dad's. And at that point, he was supposed to have received papers, and he had not. So I ended up having to be the one telling him what was happening, which of course was very painful and scary. But things, I think that's the way it was, because we needed that jolt back to reality of this is where we're at and how do we fix it. And so that Saturday night, Robbie had called and asked if he could keep the kids, and I dropped them off, apparently not thinking things through, because I didn't realize how extremely difficult church was going to be the next morning going by myself. So I went to church with my dad the next morning, and the kids came to church with Robbie, because honestly I was trying to get me away, not the kids. And it was hard, not just because I missed my immediate family, but I missed my church family too. And I was very broken. And when I went to pick the kids up later, Robbie and I had the first real discussion that we've probably had in years. And he told me that he had rededicated his life to Christ. Now, if you know anything about the rest of my story, I was skeptical. I had endured years of not what it should be. We'll just call it that. And so I still needed time. And I needed to be able to see the change. I needed proof. I needed evidence, because I wasn't going to go back to something that was going to be harmful to me. And there was a point when I felt like being a working mom, working 24/7, was going to be easier than being married. And Robbie said that was one of the things that broke his heart the most, was knowing that I would rather fight alone than side by side with him. So during that 40-day separation period, I prayed a lot. When you don't have anybody else to talk to God. And that's all I did, all the time. I'd be doing my other things, but always having that conversation. God, what do you want me to do? What are you going to do with this? I felt like being alone would be easier than going through the trenches and fighting for my marriage. But God said, don't you think I'm capable of changing Robbie? Am I not capable of changing you? So I knew what was going to have to happen, and I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but it's always worth it. So we started counseling together, and my counselor was in awe of, honestly, she's like, I don't know this man that's sitting here, because you're not the same man that I spoke with your wife about a few months ago. I don't see anything that she saw in you. And I said, because it's not there anymore. He used to have a kind of volatile temper, and I was not ever really worried that he would hit me, so don't go there. But I'm just a naturally anxious person, so it was really hard on me. But it's not there anymore. If you want to see a changed man, you look at Robbie. And my counselor says a lot, that it's a true miracle. She's not ever seen anything like this. that it rarely happens where things work out. And honestly, I thought that we were gonna be in counseling a lot longer than we were. She's like, I don't feel like there's really anything that we need to talk about here. You guys are doing it all on your own. So all the things that we had worked on, all of the lack of communication for so many years had suddenly opened up, and we could be honest with each other and truly listen. And things weren't shrugged off or swept under the rug or met with, maybe you just need to go to counseling, or maybe the other person needs to go to counseling. It was just both of us admitting where we are and where we want to be, and working towards that. And we are better. We are so much different than what we were in the beginning. And everyone says, does it feel the same? No. And if it felt the same, I wouldn't have stayed, because it needed to be new. It needed to be broken, and it needed to be refreshed. It's kind of like when you break your arm and the doctor has to reset it before it can heal the right way. That it just had to get to that breaking point. And I saw him do things as a parent that I never thought I would see him do. And he started treating everyone better, but more importantly, he started treating me better. And Christ was the true center of our marriage. And what I had been asking for years started happening. So we do our quiet time and have prayer time every evening. And those are things that I wanted but never happened, or rarely happened. And it makes all the difference with Christ being the center. Now, before we are going to be done, I want to talk about one more step of obedience that was fairly pivotal and even more recent than all of my scary marriage stuff. And that is that we are to be faithful stewards with everything we are given, and that includes our children. And I love my children. I have spectacular girls. They're so unique from each other and from any other kids that I've met, and they're great. And I have a little boy who is very spunky and full of spirit, and he amazes me every day. But I had noticed that he's not the same as my girls. And trusting those instincts and knowing that I feel like God kind of gives moms insight to what their kids are going through so that they can be there to help them get through it. And I had been asking all of Alex's life, actually, if his doctor thought that we might want to do testing for autism. And she said he's not behind developmentally. He shows no real signs that I can see. We have to wait. And Alex started having what looked like panic attacks. And that was really hard for me because I've endured that. I know what it's like, and to know that there's nothing that I can do to help him get through it made it even harder. But at his 7-year wellness exam, I finally pushed and I said, look, this is different. He needs something. Who do I talk to? And I was referred out to Heartspring, and that was probably the best experience that we've had so far with doctors. We've seen a lot of them. If you have kids, you know. You see a lot of doctors, and we went through tons of testing. They were scheduled to be in April and May of this year, but there was a cancellation and they got moved up, which was very stressful because if you don't know, I homeschool my kids, and that means that I'm going to these appointments during the day, still trying to get all the work done with the kids, but there's something like 12 hours-ish of, that's just appointment time. That doesn't count your commute or anything else that they want to do. And so these appointments got moved up to February, March, and April, with supposedly a follow-up appointment in May to go over all of their findings. And he was tested for pretty much everything, because if you have signs of anxiety, they test you for ADHD, autism, obsessive compulsive disorder, and sensory processing issues. So we ran the gamut of tests, and I was glad that they were getting done before the end of the school year, so hopefully we would have an answer by the end of the school year. And just thought, that's the end of it. That's why God moved these appointments up, so that we could have a head start on getting either an IEP or a 504 in place, and it'll be fine, it's great. And then in April, Robbie lost his job that he had worked at for almost a decade. And the benefits were going to run out at the end of April. I still have that follow-up appointment, possibly more, in May, and psychological evaluations are not cheap. And I said, God, we're going to keep going. I'm going to trust you. You've got this. And we went through all of it, all of the testing, and we made it through and finished before the end of April, which is when our insurance benefits were to run out. And we had started occupational therapy for what they called sensory processing issues. They don't really do a diagnosis of sensory processing disorder anymore unless you do like neurological testing, but it's generally kind of a side effect of one thing or the other. And so we were doing this. We had a few more occupational therapy appointments scheduled past our insurance time, but I was like, God, I know you're going to take care of it. And at one of our last appointments for occupational therapy, it was, I think, the last Tuesday in April, maybe the last Wednesday. They said that there's financial aid available. You can apply for financial aid. And so I did that the next day. And they said, well, it's 7 to 10 business days. Well, we're going to weekly appointments, so 7 to 10 business days was not looking very good to me, knowing that those appointments are well over $100 a piece. And we didn't have income at that point in time. But Pastor D had gotten with me and said that somebody in the church wanted to pay for Alex's appointments. And that was great, because it meant that somebody cared for him like I do. I applied for financial aid at 2:30 p.m. By 4:45, they called me saying, we have great news. You are approved. I was like, God, that has to be you, because I know all this bureaucratic nonsense usually takes much longer than 7 to 10 business days. Much less, a little over 2 hours. That same afternoon, I received a phone call from the psychologist at Heartspring. And she said, I've got all of Alex's diagnosis. If you want to go over it over the phone, we can avoid that next appointment, which I think they cost somewhere around $200 just to go over all of their results that they found. I said, yeah, let's do this over the phone. And she said, well, he's got ADHD. Anybody that's met Alex would say yes. And he does fall on the autism spectrum level 1. And that weekend was the autism care walk, which we had planned on walking anyway, because we have family members who we were going to walk in support of. But it was a lot different knowing that my son is now part of that community, or has always been, we just didn't know it. And I just remember going and seeing how many people were there that I thought, autism, that's so scary. But these people were there in support of everyone with autism, my son included. Not just to show that we need to raise awareness for autism, but that they can actually contribute and that they are capable. And they may be a little bit different, but showing us how they're different and unique so that we can help them be their most successful selves. And knowing that this community of support exists was huge. And I can't think that any of it happened without God. And he knew that I needed that. So immediately after getting results for this test, we turn around and see all these people that love my son, that they're okay with autism, which can be intimidating. But it was a very moving experience, and I'm glad that God moved our appointments up. And to whoever paid for those appointments, whether you're here or not, just know that it spoke to my heart, and that Robbie and I both appreciate it greatly. Now, before I go, I have to tell you, obedience isn't easy, ever. It is always 110% worth it. And we kind of went through a lot of stuff this last month. Nothing big, but just lots of little things that can work to try and throw you off. So as I'm trying to prepare for all of this, and I actually decided in October that I was going to kick things up a notch with my prayer life and do better about keeping a prayer journal. And in those moments, things started getting more difficult at home. And it's not anything that has to do with people. It's, stuff breaking or just little annoyances like finding bugs in the house. And, I don't like creepy crawlies. So if there's spiders or anything, I'm the last person to kill. Just remember that. Please don't ask me to kill them. And so we were having a really tough month. And even yesterday, the furnace was acting weird, and I've been praying a lot that God would fix things, but I actually got to the point of frustration probably in the middle of October, if it was even that far into October, and I decided to sit down and write a letter to Satan, and I would like to share that with you because I feel like we all kind of need to do it. Satan, it seems that we have to have a little chat. I have a lot going on, and I'm trying harder every day to be obedient. I will speak at the ladies' breakfast. I have an important story to tell. I will be doing my best to pray more often. In fact, you've all but poured gasoline on the fire, making me want to pray even more. I'm easy to scare, but hard to break. I am the daughter of the King of Kings. He has already won. I may still be trapped in the battle, but he isn't. It's pretty stupid that you think I'm going to give up. As often as you try, you haven't won. I may grow tired and weary, but that's where he steps in.
Amen.
My story will be told. God will be the hero. I will be the villain turning good. And you'll be a tiny footnote that no one will even care about because, in the words of MC Hammer, can't touch this. God's got this. And by this, I mean me. You've already lost this girl. Hashtag sorry, not sorry. I don't expect you'll ease up anytime soon, but know this, I'm not either.
Yeah.
Hashtag victorious, hashtag mic drop, hashtag Satan who, hashtag God is number one, hashtag can't touch this, hashtag daughter of the king, hashtag royalty, hashtag unbreakable, hashtag he loves me more than you hate me.
Amen. Amen. Good job.
I'd like to pray with you guys before we dismiss. Lord, thank you for the opportunity to share my story. And thank you for showing me how prevalent you are throughout it. I pray that as we leave this place, that we would all try our hardest to be more obedient to you. And Lord, it can be scary, but we know that it's all for your glory. Guide us and keep us every day. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.